It's the end of the year, but music is still being released. We still got a couple projects coming out here and there, and somebody just decided to drop something kind of unexpectedly, I would say. Khalid just put out a 9-track EP project album. I don't know, like it's very debatable in my mind what classifies an EP versus an album. So I'm just gonna call it a 9-track project called Scenic Drive, the tape. And there's a lot to talk about with this project that Mr. Khalid just dropped. And Danielle is here to talk about it.
Hello.
Daniela, you're a first timer, so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I feel so welcomed.
Good, you should, because I know you're a fan, obviously.
I am on rotation's number one fan, 100%.
Oh
Number one
boy,
fan, the man.
love that. Love to hear it. We love our fans over here. And the reason I asked you to come on is because I know you've been following Khalid for a while since he debuted, and you're kind of, well, you are a fan of his. Like, would you say you've been tracking him throughout he's only put out 2 albums, so he's had kind of a short career. Would you say you've kind of kept up with him even with this project that he put out?
Yeah, definitely. I always love Khalid because he's so reliable with his music. I know exactly the kind of vibe that I'm going to get when I turn it on. It's the perfect vibe for when you're driving late at night or
Mm.
just trying to relax, wind down. You can throw it on, and you know that if it's Khalid, it's going to be the perfect mood to just relax you and calm you down.
And I think like the biggest thing with this project that he put out is it does just that. But to me, when I've listened to it over and over again, it's one of those projects that you can tell he's just talking about smoking weed pretty much the whole time. And just like, but that is like his whole vibe, like this whole aesthetic. He's very much this young person that's just about having a good time, like chill, turning up, like whatever it is. He just wants you to have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, this album does get a little bit more mature than his previous albums, and he does get into some stuff
Hmm.
that are a little deeper. Like, for example, the main thing about this album is it takes you through the journey of a relationship.
Hmm.
And it starts off being in the honeymoon phase, moving into the problems that he had in his relationship, and then eventually it ends with him moving on into another one. And weed is definitely one of the themes in this album. He
Yeah.
does mention it a lot, and in the first relationship it's kind of used as a way to calm him down and to medicate himself and to just feel better about the situation, but he
Hmm.
ends up not needing it in his new relationship.
Yeah, I think one of the songs that he really talks the most about that is on, well, at least to me, what I caught was in Backseat, which I think is like the second or third track. And he's like, talking about pulling over to the side, airing out the car, like, typical things that like teenagers or young people do when they're smoking and don't want to get in trouble with their parents. But yeah, like, I think you're right. Like, that analysis of using weed as medication, as he basically says, to kind of cope with things, like, that is a theme that he mentions.
Exactly, yeah, and Backseat's a really cool song on the album slash EP, whatever you want to call it. It's really cool because it just really showcases his storytelling abilities. That's one of the things that reasons why people love Khalid so much is because he's such a great storyteller. And with that song, you can really picture yourself just being in the car and driving with him. You know exactly what's happening. You know the vibe of him and the two other people that are in the car, his girlfriend and his girlfriend's friend,
Mhm.
and you can just visualize it in your mind as if you're there.
And I think we need to mention the bigger picture that we're kind of dancing around is the name Scenic Drive itself is actually a place in El Paso where Khalid actually talks about being a fundamental area for his music career. And in an interview he did with Zane Lowe, like he talked about El Paso being a place where like he wrote his first song, or like he really started to hone in on his craft. And Scenic Drive was one of these places that like he grew up going to and driving around with his friends doing exactly what we just described. So I think that's like a huge component to think about too, is just this is another instance of Khalid like giving us a window into his life and into like his childhood in a sense. And like you mentioned to you, Danielle, like the whole thing about him like maturing throughout the project or as we go through it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of cool because El Paso, he mentions throughout interviews that he doesn't really have a home because he was a child in the military. Um, and his parents were both in the military, so and I think he lived in Germany for a year or two. And El Paso is kind of the place that took him in, and he considers his home, even though he never really had one. It's the closest thing he has to a hometown where people just accept him and recognize him. So it makes sense why this song is based off of, or the album has some references to the place that he considers his home.
Exactly. And the lead single off the project that he put out a little bit sooner to when this dropped earlier in December was Present. And he talked about it in the interview too with Zane Lowe, how it literally is what it sounds. And when you listen to the track too, it's very direct. It's just talking about just taking the time to like be present with people and be in the moment and take advantage of that time. Cause he mentioned it, he linked it specifically with the pandemic and saying, like, you know, we've been separated from people for so long, and some of us are just starting to get back together and have like in-person like interaction. So just take the time to really be present with someone and enjoy the moment.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's cool because if you take the song out of the context of the album, it can kind of apply to any part of your life. But then if you take it into the album, then you see it's like the first song of the album, the first part of the relationship that he's in. So it's that honeymoon phase where everything's happy and he just wants to spend all of his time with the person he's with.
Mhm.
Everything, he just wants to be present with them. And if you take it away from that too, it can apply to any part of your life, which is really cool.
Where on the album do you feel like it starts to take that turn in the relationship where you said it kind of, something comes up or he starts to realize something isn't right here?
Um, I feel like pretty much right after Present. I think there's
Okay,
only
yeah.
one song where he is happy and in the honeymoon phase. And soon after that, with Backseat, you're kind of starting
Mhm.
to get the vibe that these two people are not right for each other. They're just not meant
Mhm.
to be. They don't seem to be on the same page about anything. In Backseat, she's very um she's having an existential crisis and they're just in two different places in their lives and he's just trying to relax and stay calm and stay cool. He also doesn't seem to like her friend. I was kind of getting that vibe from him. He kind of throws some shade at her and saying that she talks a lot. So it just seems like starting from there, Khalid's realizing that the person he's with is not necessarily the right person for him, but it's only the beginning of the thought, so it's not gonna lead anywhere at that point.
Mm. And I really, really like the track after that, which is Retrograde, because for me, speaking from a sonic perspective and kind of hearing the nuances of the actual music and the production of the album, to me, that track has like the most Khalid sound, if that makes sense. Like he always kind of goes for these really funky and like alt pop arrangements. But a big thing with this project too that he mentions is he's kind of going in more of an R&B direction. But when I first heard Retrograde, I was like, this sounds like something from like, either one of his first two albums, like American Teen or Free Spirit. Like it just had that really signature, like Khalid stamp, you could say.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's always had R&B influences, and it's something that he's definitely aligned himself with, but you could definitely see that in this 3rd song on the album.
And I know I might be more familiar with the collaborators than you are. I'm not sure how familiar you are with
Yeah.
like
I
Black
to
or
be
like.
honest, I didn't really know a lot of the people that he was
Mhm.
collaborating with, but I really liked them all, and I'm definitely gonna have some new music to listen to, which I'm excited about.
Well, it's funny because I was in the same boat. I didn't know like half of the people he was collaborating with. I knew like Black and I knew Lucky Day and Kiana Lede, Mahi Jordan, like Ari Lennox. Like it was funny too because in the interview with Zayn, like he unleashed this like celebrity list of people that are gonna be on this project. And Zayn like lost his shit. It was the funniest thing. I loved it. And it's because like Khalid doesn't. I meant to look back and see like just how frequently he does do collabs, but I feel like he typically doesn't. Like I don't think he really opts for collaborations too much. Would you agree with that?
I think he'll definitely collaborate with people on their albums.
Hmm.
He will definitely release singles. There have been many singles that he's released. I think Billie Eilish. I think he actually Alicia Keys was on this album in the introduction, and he also came out with a song with
That's
her.
right.
So I think he will collaborate with people when it comes to their stuff, but when it comes to his, he's a little less likely to, which was kind of a surprise when pretty much every song, I think there were maybe 2 or 3 songs that did not have another person on them, which was really
Yeah.
cool. It led me to know more people, and he says that he only collaborates with people that he really trusts and believes in their music and gets along with as artists. So
Hmm.
that also that anyone he's with has the Khalid stamp of approval. It's someone that he really appreciates as a musician.
Oh yeah, and I just like I said, I loved some of these collaborations specifically for me. And I guess we'll kind of skip to the bottom here because I just loved Scenic Drive, like the last song on the album. I just thought like that song was such a bop. It was so catchy. And something for me that I like to look for when it comes to a collaboration is hearing that person just like completely take over the track. Like it just sounds like everything else just like fades away. Like whoever the album's name is under, like they're not even there anymore. Like, and that's the moment I got with Ari Lennox because I love her and I love her voice. And she just has such a distinct sound that as soon as I heard her voice, I didn't even know if she was on it until I heard her voice. And then I was like, holy shit, like this just got interesting.
Right at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another thing too. Like, the album, like, it ends on that song, which is kind of like a high note for me, but like it also feels like there's more, like, right? Like, don't you think there should be more after it?
Yeah, because it was only there were including the introduction, there were only 9 songs.
Hmm.
So it definitely makes you feel like there should have been another couple of songs, and I would have loved because I don't think there was a single song that I did not like on this album. I definitely had my favorites, but every single song I would listen to again and gladly listen to
Hmm.
again. And I
What are
did. I listened to the album all through like 5 times. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, what are your favorites then, or one of your favorites?
my absolute favorite song is Brand New. I
Mm,
loved Brand New. That one was so good. Even when I was just listening through the first time, not paying attention to the lyrics, I was like, okay, this is the one. This is the one for me. I think Khalid and Quinn's voices just meshed so well together. The contrast that they have with his very deep voice and her
mm,
higher one, they just sound so well together. And also, it's one of the only 2 songs on the album where you hear the perspective of the ex-girlfriend, which is really
mhm.
cool. It's just
Right.
about their fights that they had, and you get to hear it in live time what they were fighting about. It was really cool concept, a great idea, and it by far my favorite.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too. And I didn't even know who Quinn was either. So that was another one of those instances where we get exposed to another artist. And he's someone that has that kind of star power now where he could easily expose lesser known artists or more up and coming artists to his audience, which is obviously very global and very, very massive. I wanted to ask you because I didn't pick up on this literally until I just listened to the album before we hopped on this call. So, Open, which comes a few tracks later with Mahi Jordan, if you listen closely, the cadence from Brand New, like the main chorus, is mixed into the music in Open.
Really? I didn't
Yeah.
notice that.
I like just caught it, like I said, not that long ago. And
Ooh.
I love like that kind of concept where artists and producers will like mix in something that happened earlier in the album to something that happens later. Cause like it kind of, I don't know, like it's an interesting concept to think about them going back and mirroring something that already happened, especially when you have like a story like this that's being told. It kind of like depicts that idea that as Khalid is like going through this journey, he's thinking back to that time, like that song represents.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't even notice that, and I'm gonna have to do another listen and look out for it. He even
Yeah.
did something like that in his introduction, you could hear in the background some of his
Hmm.
older songs off of his first album. So cool. And honestly, such a little bit of a flex, which rightfully so. He deserves it.
But actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to bring up the aspect of the intro and playing those older tracks from his old work. To me, like when I first heard that, I kind of thought it signified a departure from his older music. And as he's ushering into this new like project, this new era, um, which he also mentioned in the interview, writing this EP was like his means of getting back into writing music and that he's potentially working on an album. I wouldn't quote me on it, but like that's at least what he hinted at. So I love like that whole concept of, he had said it had been a while since he like wrote anything, since he put anything together. And Scenic Drive really helped him hop back into the saddle. Like, do you think the intro kind of signified that as well, or did you get something else from it?
I can definitely see that, and especially because it was all muffled and it sounded like he was playing it on his car radio as, of course, Scenic Drive.
Hmm.
It I could definitely see him looking back on his past and kind of playing it as a memory or recording and going into his new part of his musical career and even symbolically driving into it in his Scenic Drive.
There we go. There, Danielle likes puns, everybody. We have to like pull a pun or two. What else do I want to mention? What else? What else? Oh, yeah. The only other track, I think we've mentioned almost all of them, but one track that I really, really love, not just because it features another one of my really favorite singers, Kiana Lede, is Voicemail. Um, because I also like this concept that he addresses, um, which is to not mention the name of the song in the actual song, but to kind of let the song show the concept. And the concept voicemail that translates through the lyrics in the song is "Don't keep me waiting," which essentially like a voicemail is kind of a double-edged sword because it like signifies you could be waiting for somebody to get back to you, but you're also like still reaching out to tell them you're still here. You know what I mean?
That's true, yeah, definitely. And what was cool about that song was the song right before it, All I Feel Is Rain, it literally led into that song.
Yeah.
It was so cool. You could hear in the very end the him dialing the phone, and then as soon as he's done dialing, it flows into the next song where he's leaving the voicemail. And I was like, "Oh my god, what a genius move, Khalid. Come on, that was great."
I know I love there's so many albums too that I've listened to that intentionally do that where it's like you have to listen to it track by track to get those kind of nuances and those transitions. I freaking love that shit. Like
Oh yeah.
I love
And if
it.
you listen Yeah, and if you listen to the whole album and you get that flow that he has going on, you can kind of see how in the beginning it's not really as much of a flow, but in the end there's definitely more of a flow, and you can kind of relate it to the fact that he's now having clarity in his relationship and in his life, and he's understanding things more. Before there was more of a disconnect, and then as the album continues and he understands what's going on in their relationship, that the two people are not meant for each other, and he moves on into his new relationship, it just flows together very nicely. And so you can have that symbolic meaning behind it as well.
Mhm. Wow, good analysis there. That was great.
Thank you very much.
You must have done your research or something.
Or something.
Or something. Well, something else I want to bring up too, that song Open that I mentioned with Mahi Jordan. He's actually worked with Mahi Jordan before. I don't know if you knew that, Daniela, but they had another track put out, I think 2 or 3 years ago now. Actually, it might have been sooner than that, called Caught Up. And it's also a very, Mahi Jordan is another one of these artists that's very well known for creating this very vibey, very like darkly tinged alternative R&B. So I thought they just fit in so well with Khalid, and especially with his voice and his style, that it was just, to me, it was like a dream collaboration.
Yeah. That was a really great song. It was so sweet and it was just a very much a feel good song. So I definitely agree. That's probably up there on my favorite songs of the album.
Yeah, I could see it's really hard. Like it is hard to pick one, because they all stand alone, but they stand together and they're like a mighty troop. They're a mighty swarm of songs that just depicts this great story like we've mentioned this whole time. Like it all goes together so well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, I want to ask you, like, what do you think this means for Khalid moving forward? Like we mentioned, he kind of talked about this album being a means of him getting back into music and potentially putting out more work. Do you think he's gonna like continue down this path, like this kind of sonic experience? Or like what do you think this could mean for him moving forward?
Yeah, I think he's going to continue down this vibe that we're getting with this album. I think he's really exploring and he's found himself as an artist. He knows his strengths, which is storytelling, and he knows that he can draw people in by having the audience relate to the experiences that he's had. So I think it would be a very smart move on him to continue down this path. I
Mhm.
haven't heard, I think, a single bad review about this album. Everyone has enjoyed it from what I've heard, at least, and what I've read.
Mhm.
So I think that he is definitely going to continue putting out content similar to this.
And it's interesting too, because like we've mentioned, actually, we haven't really touched upon this too much, is just how young he still is. And he debuted with American Teen when he was 17, and it just blew up. And then, Free Spirit was also really big, and he had an EP in between that like was also like really big. Like he just keeps catching fire with whatever it is that he puts out. And to me, he's like in this class of like younger artists that are just like taking over the world right now. And he's very much at the helm. Like he's leading like all these other young artists that are just looking for their shot to just be their authentic selves. And I could see like, yeah, I think he's maturing through his journey, but he still holds on to like that younger innocence in a way.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, he is so young, so of course he's still gonna have some sort of innocence, and it's cool because we are around his age, so we are also maturing and growing as adults with him. So you know how sometimes like people will say, "Oh, Zac Efron, my taste in men has changed as Zac Efron has grown older. He's just stayed my taste in men." And that's kind of like with Khalid, where my taste in music and my experiences are growing with him. So it's very cool to be an audience member listening to it.
Mhm. I agree. Yeah, for sure. Have you ever seen him live? I forgot.
No, I haven't, but I would love to see him live. Next time he goes on tour, I'm
Mm.
buying a ticket. I'm
Oh,
going to.
yes. I would love to see him. I heard he's so good.
Yeah, I feel like he would be such a great performer, and I think it would be such a fun concert to go to.
Oh yeah. Can't wait to see. Hopefully he'll bring that into the present. See what I did there? Had to
We
go out
love
with a
to see
bang.
it.
Well, Daniela, thank you so much for coming on. It was so good to have you finally.
Of course, anytime. I'm glad to be on.